Type 2 diabetes is driven by insulin resistance, but one of the many overlooked contributors begins in your gut. Today, we're focusing on gut dysbiosis, one of the 12 core defects of type 2 diabetes. Let's get into it. Hello, I'm Richie.
And I'm Amber.
And Amber, today we're talking about gut dysbiosis, which I know where my gut is.
Well, good.
But this sounds all right. Yeah, we're all working on our midsections. Let's just leave it at that.
I didn't say that.
Well, I think that was implied.
Nope.
I felt like it was implied.
Nope.
Okay.
That's a you problem.
That is a me problem. All right. Today, gut dysbiosis. Dysbiosis, I'm guessing it has to do with not necessarily my intestines, but what's going on, the life forms that are in my intestines, the bacteria that are in my intestines. Is that correct?
Yes. So it's a state of dysregularity in the life forms in your gut. Okay. If you break down each individual section of that word, yes. We usually start out with normal physiology, and I think that why would we do anything different today? Because I think it's important to talk about...
Tell us about healthy guts, Amber.
Healthy guts. So your gut is full of trillions of bacteria. Trillions. Your gut is home to trillions of microbes that aren't just along for the ride. They play a very vital role in digestion, immunity, metabolism, all of the things that make up what we would call a healthy gut. So your microbes help digest fiber, and they produce short-chain fatty acids and big names like butyrate, acetate, propionate. These things just help break down some of the nutritional food that you would eat. And they reduce inflammation, that those short chain fatty acids I just spoke about reduce inflammation, they improve insulin sensitivity and support gut barrier integrity. So there's a lot of beneficial microbes like Akkermansia, Muciniphila, and Roseburia intestinalis, which stimulate the production of GLP-1, which is that hormone that enhances insulin release and slows gastric emptying. And the gut lining stays intact, preventing bacterial toxins from leaking into the bloodstream, which is a phenomenon called leaky gut that we can get back into later.
So that's a healthy gut.
That's a healthy gut. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about gut dysbiosis, which is not healthy gut, if I can read between the lines.
This is an imbalance of your harmful versus beneficial bacteria.
What makes one bacteria harmful versus benefit? And why would we even have harmful bacteria? I don't quite understand. Like, how does that stuff get there?
Well, we'll talk at the end of this podcast about how we can increase some of the helpful bacteria. But in terms of how it gets there, it's like bacteria anywhere else. It's what are you feeding the bacteria with to have it thrive or not? I think
so basically, am I giving it the things that it needs to be successful? Am I creating an environment that's healthy for this bacteria, and whether the environment I'm creating is going to dictate whether one bacteria or the other is going to do well in that environment. Okay.
Exactly. Like if you wanted to call together a group of cyclists, you're going to mention things about bicycles and trail riding versus riding on the road. You're going to be very specific to the cyclist community versus the knitting community is a different call out. So it's your it's what environment supports what bacteria.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And leaky gut allows these lipopolysaccharide toxins into the bloodstream. And chronic inflammation can block insulin signaling. And we've talked a little bit about that in former podcasts.
So it's these microbes that are escaping my gut via that leaky gut, the incomplete or the ineffective gut barrier that's contributing to the inflammation throughout the body? Is that
Yeah,
essentially I've got foreign stuff in my blood that shouldn't be there, right?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that in a 2022 study in Nature, they had actually spoken to some degree about end-stage renal disease and how in 20% of people who had end-stage renal disease, they also had bacterial genes in their bloodstream, which meant there was gut bacteria in your bloodstream, which should not happen. You should not have that bacteria in your bloodstream. And so the proposed mechanism in which it does that is leaky gut, this gut permeability that allows this into the bloodstream.
So I know when you have, like, if you were to get, like, say, an abdominal puncture or something like that,
Right, a
that
perforated bowel.
usually they want to treat that pretty quickly because of
Oh, yeah.
your gut stuff getting into your bloodstream. Is
your
leaky
peritoneal
is leaky
cavity.
gut basically a slow drip version of that? I mean, is that pretty much what we're talking about?
To some degree, kind of.
I mean, it's not occurring so fast that I'm going to die quickly, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing is happening. Stuff that's in my gut.
Yeah, it's not good.
Stuff that's
either
in my gut
way.
and
One
supposed
is
to be in
more
my gut and stay in
life-threatening.
my gut is getting into my bloodstream. Is that accurate?
Yeah, one is absolutely entirely more acute and would absolutely require a hospital stay and
Right.
would be life-threatening. And the other one could be more chronically life-threatening. So I think in that way, that's fair.
Well, I mean, like, the reason that diabetes is not an emergency until it's an emergency is that it's not urgent, right? It's not going to it's never going to kill you this week. It's never going to happen this week.
If you had type 1 and had a low blood sugar, it could be this week. But
Okay. Again, type 1 is what type 1 is. We all understand. But specifically,
or if you went into diabetes,
type 2,
diabetic ketoacidosis.
the thing that we
it
speak
could be this
to
week.
every week, the thing that we're trying to encourage people to move towards remission of, is in general not urgent until it is.
Correct.
Right? It's always you always got time. You can always adopt some behaviors. You can always do some things. And then I go and step on a nail and I walk around all day with the nail in my foot because I've got such bad neuropathy in my feet that I'm not aware of this thing. And then, I'm going to the doctor for a foot wound and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to take that foot. And then it's a problem because it's too late at that point in time. I'm not going to grow another limb. And the second I lose that limb, now I'm not ambulatory, and the whole snowball really, really picks up some speed. So, when I'm trying to frame it as such in that if this was bad enough, they'd rush me to the emergency room. If there was a decent gash in my abdominal wall, they would stitch that up pretty quick. They would push people out of the way in the emergency room to stitch this up because it's that much of an emergency. But as long as I just spread the same thing out over a couple of, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, the same thing's happening. Stuff that's in my guts is getting into my bloodstream and it's making me sick. It's just happening so slow that it's not urgent. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yes, and that what I just mentioned was very specifically in end-stage renal disease people not on hemodialysis. So it's a very specific, small subset. I get the point you're leading towards, but it's not exactly correlative to this very small, tiny population group that I was speaking of.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. Okay. And I can be off base. I'm merely asking the question: Is the inflammation that I'm experiencing as a result of leaky gut due to bacteria that are supposed to be in my intestine getting into my bloodstream?
Yes.
And wouldn't it be better to not to do that?
Bacterial toxins are getting out into the bloodstream. Exactly. And it would be better to not have that. 100%. Yep. Because that chronic inflammation result is going to block insulin signaling, and that's part of the whole problem.
It's going to result in multiple system failures.
Exactly.
We've
everything that we've talked about before in insulin resistance and that whole process. Yeah. And this gut dysbiosis can reduce glucagon-like peptide 1 and increase insulin resistance through that pathway as well. and it promotes fat storage and worsens blood sugar. So that same study in 2022 in Nutrients confirms that dysbiosis contributes to insulin resistance, and it even goes further to impact the complications that can arise in diabetes, like kidney, nerve, and vascular damage. And you can really target certain bacteria and try to build them up, and that can support remission.
Okay. Are there medications that help our guts?
There are. You have metformin, which is very interesting because metformin is thought to be a medication that works in the muscle and liver. But more recent research really suggests that it improves the balance of the gut microbiota, so it can be helping in that. And there are some studies that also show metformin increasing longevity and lifespan. So this is very likely the mechanism by which that occurs.
So,
or at least one of them.
I got a question, and maybe this isn't germane to this conversation, but like, if metformin is helping my guts, why do I typically have so much, let's just call it intestinal distress or that's a very common side effect of metformin. How does that make any sense?
I'm not sure, honestly. I know a lot of things about the side effects of metformin, but the exact reason why, that's a great question. I feel like I should know that, but honestly I don't.
Okay. You don't have to know
especially given that it helps this gut dysbiosis.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
it's a great question.
It sounds like, I know when I have healthy guts, I'm let's just call it regular, right? So if metformin's helping the gut environment,
why would it make it worse? I mean, it could absolutely
doesn't
is a major side effect of is diarrhea. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe you help me out at that. And so we've spoken about how good gut flora increases glucagon-like peptide 1. So the medication GLP-1 receptor agonists, these can mimic the hormones affected by gut dysbiosis. And almost everyone understands and recognizes that antibiotics can wipe out all the good and bad bacteria.
Right. Kind of a scorched earth policy. So it's indiscriminate in the gut microbes that it kills. Yeah.
So, and then there's a lot of research out there on supplementing with prebiotics and probiotics. And that's an area that I really look forward to even more definitive answers around, because you definitely want to ensure that they have the correct proportions of different things. But it also drives home why I really appreciate getting this from foods more than supplements, because sometimes you can, like, there's a sweet spot with a certain bacteria, and if you overdo it, you're creating more harm than good.
Are there tests to know if I've got a good, healthy gut environment?
You could have a fecal test for this. I mean, I don't know who would do that, what labs do that, because, well, I guess here's the better thing to say. What I do know is to help gut dysbiosis, some people have had fecal fat transplants, and I've seen where people have had fecal fat transplants and had great successes with things like irritable bowel syndrome. And I think it makes sense for people who have irritable bowel syndrome, because that's really, depending on the severity, it can be very life-altering.
I have a healthy fecal donor, and they're providing a specimen that's then
transplanted into the donor. Yep.
Yeah. Huh. Can I register to become a donor?
You can register, but then they would check your fecal fat
I'm
and
just kidding.
see. I don't know that they would accept. It just depends. Your morning shake is really beneficial.
Yeah, there's a lot of
likely.
phytonutrients in there.
Yeah.
It's something.
I don't know that they would pay you very much.
I'm just flushing all
I
this
want
gold
you to do
every
this
single
research
morning. Yeah.
and get back to me on this now. I'm very curious. Oh boy. So yeah, let's talk about not getting a fecal fat transplant and actually
let's talk
feeding
about
the right
behaviors that
microbes.
I can do that are more helpful than the medication. And if we can, I'd really kind of like to go into, like, tell us a little bit more about the good bacteria. Who are the good guys and the bad guys, if we could use that analogy, and how do I provide the good guys with the resources they need to thrive, and maybe deny the bad guys the resources they need to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 90% of your gut bacteria are predominantly made up of firmicutes and bacteroidetes. And so the more bacteroidetes you have, so we're not talking about like they're both 50-50 and you want one to be more than the other. We're talking about most of the time we have more firmicutes than bacteroidetes. But when you have a higher proportion of bacteroidetes in general, these were leaner individuals who had less insulin resistance. But it's not that you want to say, like, just make sure this one is more than the other. There are species within each that are good and species within each that are bad. But overall, if you increase the bacteroidetes, the better it would be. I don't know if that helps. So you kind of just want to nurture the right species within. Okay. And I mean, I don't know who's going to be like, let me check my levels of bacteroidetes and firmicutes. And I have said these so many times and I still can't pronounce them really well. So
what can I do to promote bacteroidetes? Is that right? What can I do to promote those guys in my guts? I think that's what you said. I want to.
That is what I said. Yeah, because gut health is incredibly complex. You know, so far we've talked about short chain fatty acids, inflammation, microbial balance. It's a lot. So I think it's better to just talk about, you know, how to feed the good gut bacteria and take that home as best you can.
What do they like? What do they like to eat so that I can feed it to them often?
Yes. So they like polyphenol-rich foods. So there's a type of bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphili. There will be a quiz on this later.
I hope
there will not. And these help maintain gut barrier integrity and reduce systemic inflammation, which is really key to enhancing sensitivity to insulin.
These are the guys making sure stuff's not getting out of my guts, right?
Well, they're increasing insulin sensitivity. Well, I guess, yeah, maintaining gut barrier integrity as well. So polyphenol-rich foods would be your cranberries, pomegranate, grapes.
Like dark red stuff is what it sounds like. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. And green tea would be a good source as well. That's not exactly red. So, and then inulin-rich prebiotics, which would come from garlic, onions, asparagus, leeks.
Leeks. Okay. So
leeks to prevent leaky gut.
Leaks prevent leaks. Huh.
Look at that.
Okay, yeah.
Look at that. And then there's another gut bacteria called Roseburia intestinalis. And this is a key butyrate producing bacterium that helps reduce inflammation and increase glucose uptake.
Okay.
And the way that you would feed this would be increasing resistant starches.
Okay. Examples of?
Potatoes, like sweet potatoes, green bananas,
Okay.
steel cut oats, and beta glucans.
How green are these bananas? Because to me, that's a fine line between this ain't even a banana anymore and...
green bananas, very little to no yeller.
Okay.
Or yellow.
So not good candidates for banana bread. Those.
Oh
bananas.
yeah, the opposite as good banana bread candidates, exactly. And back to the beta glucans, these are found in barley and old-fashioned oats, steel-cut oats.
This is those whole grains that you were talking about. Yeah.
And then the inulin foods from before, your leeks to prevent leaks, and artichokes as well.
Okay.
Then you have your lactobacillus species. You have Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus casei, and Lactobacillus fermentum. And these are probiotic strains. They help reduce pro-inflammatory cytokines and really help support the diversity of the gut microbes. And diversity tends to be really good in your gut, come to find out. And the way that you feed these are fermented foods, especially. The L. plantarum would be found in sauerkraut and kimchi. And then you have Lactobacillus casei in kefir, yogurt, and certain probiotic drinks. And with the yogurts, you want to be careful for the added sugar content in those. And then you have Lactobacillus fermentum, which is found in sourdough and in some fermented olives, which is pretty hard to find fermented olives. But if you do, they could have that Lactobacillus fermentum.
I don't think I've ever even heard of fermented olives.
I had not either until looking into what was high in the Lactobacillus fermentum.
Well, now that I think about it, so when we're talking about fermentation,
Yeah.
most of the olives that I get are in some kind of brine.
Yeah.
Are they fermented?
I am not an expert in this area of things, but I believe
It's like pickle adjacent, right? I mean, at least in my experience, most of the olives you get, there is certainly a saltiness or to that, that the liquid that the olives are suspended in. Are they fermented?
Fermentation and pickling are both food preservation methods that create a sour taste, but they differ in how they achieve this.
Okay.
So pickling involves soaking the food in an acidic brine like vinegar to quickly preserve it, whereas fermentation relies on natural bacteria to convert the sugars into acid, which create the sour flavor and extend shelf life. So you're creating these organic acids, alcohol, carbon dioxide, and it's that bacteria that break down the sugars and produce these byproducts that contribute to that flavor.
Okay.
And then there's Bacteroides fragilis, and this produces polysaccharide A, which balances the immune system and reduces gut-driven inflammation. And you feed this with diverse fiber sources, namely a plant-based diet, which is going to give you diverse fiber sources. And when we talk about diverse fiber sources, it's interesting. I was listening to Dr. Christopher Gardner on a different podcast that you had referred me to listen to. And he made a very salient point regarding diversity in the food supply and diverse grains, and that everything in America is pretty much wheat. And this one kind of strain and species, which is amazing, it just in general lacks diversity. For example, I have farro in our pantry right now, but it's not a grain that I'm used to cooking with. I found a recipe that called for
Right.
farro that I wanted to try.
And we got quinoa and we got all these other things.
Yeah,
And
but
yeah.
we're going to eat wheat a couple
Right.
times a day versus quinoa and
Yeah.
farro and all our other choices of grains that we have. They're just not as like, I think we ordered the farro from Amazon even. I don't think we could get it in our local supermarket.
Okay, so is the solution to happy guts effectively dietary bingo?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by.
So let me phrase it this way.
Yeah.
All right. If we were to say put together a matrix, and on the matrix is just a whole host of here's some vegetables and here's some fruits and here's some grains and all that other kind of stuff. And the goal is, just diversity, right?
Yes.
Like it's get to, let's just call it 30 of these in the span of a week and my guts are going to be happy, versus you don't get to pick the same square 30 different times and expect to have the same
Yes.
benefit. Not that one's not bad, but if I'm only focusing on this thing, right?
Well,
If I only eat apples, well, that's probably better than eating, sugar, added applesauce. But it would be really great if the apples had some buddies from another fruit family or another vegetable family or something else that's bringing something slightly different to it. That's maybe
Yeah, there are actually
nurturing
studies
some
on
slightly
that.
different gut bacteria.
There are studies that show that if you're fighting cancer, for example, if you're really trying to get the most robust protection from inflammation and polyphenols and your anti-inflammatory fruits and vegetables, that variety is really key. And a lot of that's for the reasons that we've talked about through here. But you have, for example, we were just talking about how you have your garlic and your asparagus and onions and leeks that are helping maintain gut barrier integrity and reducing systemic inflammation. And then you got your green bananas, for example, that are really helping improve glucose uptake and also reducing inflammation. You have different things working in different areas. So the more variety that you have, the more you're going to be able to cover the whole spectrum.
Are there any, so we talked a lot of foodstuffs.
I wasn't through with the foodstuffs.
Well, please continue.
So back to the Bacteroides fragilis. Aside from diverse fiber sources, namely a plant-based diet, there's also omega-3 rich foods like chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, and then your polyphenols like blueberries, cocoa, red grapes, those things that can help increase that.
Cocoa, we're talking cocoa powder, not eat more chocolate.
Right, like dark cocoa or cocoa powder. Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting in the nutrients review, that same 2022 study, one of the key takeaways was that it was not just about fiber. And this goes exactly back to the really great point that you brought up. It's about the right kinds of fiber and polyphenols that feed the right microbes. And those microbes then in turn reduce chronic inflammation that's driving insulin resistance, which is creating high blood sugars across time. And what's even better are those short chain fatty acids that those help produce, and they can heal. And it's like putting Vaseline ointment on chapped lips. They can really heal that gut lining and calm the immune system and make your body more sensitive to insulin. So I guess if I were to bring it all home, eat more plants, eat them in variety, include fermented foods, and make sure to add to your snacks and meals berries, beans, get some of those dark leafy greens, especially things kind of like kale, those kind of bittery, the ones when you bite them, they have more of a bitter, like turnip greens.
Right.
And move your body daily. And then just remember the power of the foods that you eat to help create beneficial gut bacteria and its role on blood sugar management.
Okay. All right. So that was a lot. That was so much that I'm going to do something so far to date unprecedented on this podcast. If you go to the diabetespodcast.net, we will have for your use Healthy Gut Bingo, which is basically we're going to provide a matrix with all of these foods and just get yourself 1, 2, 3 of these guys and just start to see what your PR is. See how many of these foods you can get in a week, right? So it's impossible to get them all in a day. We're talking about a new weekly behavior where just get out the matrix. And if I got 10 last week, this week I'm going to intentionally plan to get 11 of these foods into my guts and just look at how much better you'll feel. All right. So again, that's the diabetespodcast.net. While you're there, you're more than welcome to sign up for our newsletter as well. But free downloadable, specifically related to today's episode. So yet another week down. I think we only have 1 or 2 more of these things to go.
2 more.
2 more. 2 more to go. Okay. It's a lot. This is a lot. Collectively, it's a lot, but it's all good stuff. So I'm gonna go get me some healthier guts right now. I've gotten a lot of good information out of this episode that I can apply to new weekly practices.
I'm going to wait to hear your report card back on if somebody's going to give you some money for your fecal transplant, your donation there.
In this economy, everybody's got side hustles, Amber. Don't judge it. I'm just trying to put some food on the table. in the most disgusting way humanly possible.
I'm judging it.
Okay, it's fine.
So the 2 things we have left are mitochondrial dysfunction, and we're going to bring it all home with inflammation and oxidative stress, which we've talked in great detail about in multiple other podcasts. But we're going to really dive even deeper and get even more into what that exactly looks like in every aspect of the body and how it plays a role in type 2.
All right. So stay tuned, guys. We're almost there, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to the Diabetes Podcast. If you've got questions that you would like answered on the podcast, feel free to reach out to support@empowerdiabetes.com. Until next time, take courage. You can do this, and we can help.